Well, hello. We're just having a little trouble with the Zoom working with us, getting that meeting started and getting that going. Now, we do have a little bit of a thing over here for our live chat. Will be operational during this period of time. So we've got that going on. Now, my special guest that we're going to have on today is, in fact, Mr. Zack Jones from Loan Depot. And I will have him in just a second. Come on. If we can get the Zoom to cooperate with us. There we are. And this is Mr. Zack Jones. He's with Loan Depot. You see his information available there. I have to kick his audio on so that we'll be able to hear him. And we should be live. Mr. Zack Jones, Loan Depot. You have the floor, Mr. Jones. Can you hear us?
Dale, I don't have any audio on my side.
All right. Well, I've got your audio here on the phone. Go ahead and give us a talk.
Okay, I think we're good here. I've got you now.
Okay, we drop that audio now. You've got the floor. Won't you tell us about yourself there for a little bit?
Well, thank you, Dale, for having me on today. Just real briefly, I'm a Loan Depot. I'm also a sales manager, so I manage a team of loan officers here. And I've been in the business of almost 20 years. Got in the early 2000s, back in the old broker days. I was switching careers out of a healthcare career and wanted to do something that was a little bit more exciting. And I got my fill. It's a lot more exciting in the mortgage business than it was in healthcare. So did that for a couple of years, and then went to the bank side with the economy was in a kind of a spot where and also the broker world was in a spot where there was a little bit of a negative connotation about the mortgage brokers, and I wanted to establish myself with a little bit more reputable kind of background. And so I went to the bank side, and I worked in a large regional bank, about an 18th state bank, for a number of years, and then came back out because it was a great place to be during the recession. And good solid performance in the banking world through that period of time in the mortgage business. And then it became a little bit more cumbersome to work in the banking system, and I went back out to retail. And so kind of retail lending is a little bit different. It's retail mortgage lending is about mortgage companies that do nothing but mortgages. So we're not affiliated with a bank. We're not trying to drive depository or investment asset kind of relationships. We focus solely on mortgages. So I've dipped back in since my departure from the banking world into the mortgage or into the broker world, which is very different now, for a time, and then am back in retail. I think I've found the right company in the right spot for probably the duration of my career, at least that the way it seems right now. So a lot of experience and a lot of different ways and a lot of different ways to come at the mortgage business. I specialize in purchase business, and obviously everybody's doing a lot of refinances. That's kind of gravy that we don't always depend on. But my focus is on helping people buy houses and do that purchase business, and make sure that we get to the closing table on time. So that's kind of the critical piece of that.
Yeah, the closing table is where all of the sweat pops out on people's foreheads on this. Now, I think I'm going to go ahead and prop up a little bit of a advertisement for you, that it'll have your information on it if people want to catch this. Hopefully that this in fact plays and stream well. This is a bit of a learning curve on my part, and I want to thank you in particular for visiting with us, because from the studio it all looks good. All the audio levels look good, and I wish I had a second person in there actually following the live stream to see how that goes, because we are actually we're spooling live, and they should be able to see it. It's a public event. And if I've managed to get all of my YouTube stuff going, oh, there's so much on this backside of it. But I'm going to run a little bit of a commercial for the folks for you. And if it goes well, we'll be back in just a second.
Just at home, staying safe with my family, working hard.
Leave me alone.
We are grateful and proud of our purpose.
Now more than ever, home has new meaning. Home is everything.
Zack Jones, NMLS 546399. Call him today at 615-627-4490 and tell him Delbridge said hi. Well, if that worked, I mean, it was beautiful on my end. Now, I don't know if it shows up on the YouTube, because I've got to conserve some bandwidth, because as I introduced the on the promo through Facebook, we're going live with this. You're in Brentwood, if I'm not mistaken. It's the office. And I'm in the Holly over toward Reederville, and we've been working on with the local telecom company for a couple of weeks, trying to make sure that we didn't have streamists interrupt us. So we've got that going on. And I guess one of the things, if we are in fact streaming it as it appears to be, I'm going to ask you a question, and as you talk, I'm going to pull up the YouTube to make sure I'm at least getting the stream showing up. I got to swap a little screen over here, and if I do that, it's going to take you off. So we're just going to go as it is. I want to ask a question. Sure. I know with the diamond brokers, they have cut, color, and clarity, the three C's of buying a diamond. So I know that you have something similar to that. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what are the three C's as far as maybe getting a mortgage loan?
Sure. So ironically, I just did a video. I've launched a video series yesterday morning on my own personal Facebook page of 9 different videos having to do with the basic home buying process. And the 3 C's of credit is kind of an old concept that I made my first video on that came out yesterday morning. And so this is a really old concept to help explain in very elementary terms what credit is really based on. And so the first thing that you have is character. And then the second C of credit is capital. And then the third C of credit is capacity. So real briefly, character has to do with your ability to repay the note that you promised to pay. And so it's a measure of the character of your commitment to the lender. And real simple, do you pay your bills on time? The second is capital, and capital has to do with how much skin you have in the game, so to speak. So how much of a down payment you're putting down, whether that's on a home or on a car or whatever it is that you've got. So the capital is going to be your amount of skin in the game to help offset the risk that's being assumed by the lender. And then you have the capacity, which is basically a measure of your ability. Debt to income ratio is another way to say that. So how much capacity do you have to pay, and how solid is your capacity to repay that debt based on your employment history, your income, and your current debt level?
That makes good sense when you think about it. In terms of what a loan really is, or a mortgage, whether it be a car loan or anything, it is someone willing to loan you some money to give you use their money at a cost, and part of that cost is going to be based upon how risky you are of getting it back. Correct. And sometimes we hear the term predatory lender from time to time, and I know that a lot of times people will get very excited about buying something, and they'll get a little bit disappointed when they find out they are not actually prepared to buy at a given point in time, and they may start looking at some things that may not be, well, you mentioned a respectable and dignified type of employment. Not everyone out there in this business may, I'm not casting aspersion, but perhaps there are some that take advantage of people in less financially secure places. Now, from my standpoint, I like to work with folks, and if they're not in a good spot right now, I don't want to just throw them out with the bathwater like a baby. So I want to get them in shape, and that may take them 6 months or so to get some improvements to improve their position. Now, what can you talk about? What can you help people with maybe credit repair? How do they, if they were to go in and have a conversation with you and find out that they couldn't get the best rate because of their current level of risk that they reflect, because, maybe they have some issues or they don't have as much capacity. And so they're looking at a condition where they might be more likely to default and then leave that lender hanging, and with all the stuff that goes on. So how can they improve how attractive they are to people who want to borrow from them, which essentially is their interest over that period of time that they're going to have? What can you tell us about that?
All great questions, and we could talk for several days on that, Dale. But I think that maybe the number one assumption that we need to make is that while there were some predatory players in the mortgage market back in the 2000s, I call them the cowboys because it was kind of the wild, wild west back then. And there were some pretty crazy loans done for people who never really should have been buying houses. Much of that, as a result of the mortgage meltdown, has been regulated out. Now, I'm not a big fan of government regulation, but in this case, something had to be done. And so there's, generally going to be an overreaction, and then there's going to be an easing of those regulations back to a sensible medium point. So with customers who come in, so I think that we start off by understanding that there's about 20% incorrect reporting on credit reports, period, across the board. And so that's what even the credit bureaus acknowledge, that we have incorrect reporting there. And if you get into the technical, really fine details that some of the credit repair people suggest, that number may be more like 80%. So the way I split that out is say, well, there may be 80% incorrect reporting, but really only that 20% is what we need to worry about, because that's what affects your score and affects your ability to get a loan. So there may be a real fine detail about the way a credit account is reporting, but it doesn't matter. So let's forget about what doesn't matter and pay attention to what does. So number one, and I always want people to call the loan guy first, because we need to pull your credit report and make sure that your scores are in order, so that's a starting point for the 3 C's, because that's a measure of your character. And if your character is somehow bruised or blackened a little bit because you don't because there's an incorrect reporting on it, then we need to get that corrected. And there's some relatively simple and then a little bit more sophisticated ways to do that. If you call me up and there's one account out there that is reporting incorrectly, then we might go about a small strategy for you to contact that creditor directly and file a dispute and get that thing taken off your report. If we're in a situation where there are multiple things that are reporting through, maybe as a result of an old bankruptcy that was done poorly, or if you had a medical event or a significant life event like a divorce, and there's all kinds of messy stuff back out there that seems to be coming up in different ways, then I'm a big fan of professional credit repair. So there are good professional credit repair folks and not so good professional credit repair folks, probably like appliance repairmen. So, there's good and bad in every field. So I've allied myself. I've found 2 companies, and I'm in the process of kind of vetting out a third company. And this is a lot of years in the business. 2 companies that I trust to do credit repair, and each of them have a little bit different model about their pricing and the way that they charge the customer to do that. But neither is the monthly subscription repair fee. And so let me explain that a little bit. The folks that I work with either charge a flat fee or they charge a single item repair fee that they get paid when things are cleared. So I love that model because it keeps everybody on track and in a pretty rapid fashion. They need to get paid, so the quicker that they get repaired, that they get your line repaired, the quicker they get paid. On the other side, which is the old model of credit repair, the company says, well, yeah, we'll take care of your credit repair, Mr. Jones. And so let's get your credit card and we're going to sign you up for $299 a month. And then we'll get your credit report pulled and we'll let you know how it goes. We'll send you monthly updates every 30 days. Well, I never did like that model because as a mortgage guy and serving my customers, I want to get my customers closed more quickly and my customers want to buy a house more quickly. So there's one, if we go to the old subscription model, there's a team player on there that's trying to draw this out as long as possible because they're making $300 a month. If they're successful and they get it remedied quickly, then they don't get paid anymore. So that model's always seemed in opposition to the real estate model, which is let's get ourselves in a position quick enough and to get the customer to the closing table, because that's what they desire, is to get out of their current situation and into a new home. So the new models that I'm talking about are really efficient. They're very inexpensive in comparison. You may actually wind up spending less on the credit repair than you would if you settled those credit accounts out by yourself, because they negotiate a settlement fee and get them removed. So there's a lot of great advantages.
Well, I need to point out, if we've got any viewers at this point in time, I have to kind of take you off the screen in order to check those out. But I'm looking at the chat. We do have available a chat line for them off of the YouTube. If that is, it shows in the studio that it's broadcasting just fine. So we got that. I don't see any interaction at this point in time. If there is anybody out there, I would like them to go ahead and give me a little bit of a feedback on it and make sure they're working. And I had to pull up. I tell you what, this is a pretty substantial task to look at this. So we've got it going on at this particular point, and it says that we are still streaming excellently, and we are in great shape. Just looks like we need to get back at it. I'm going to save this one off so that it is available on the YouTube for people to come back and look at it again. And I guess I need to run one thing on my own accord here. I need to set up a little bit of a messaging for myself, because anything that can be construed as advertising, we have some regulatory requirement. So this may be a little bit of a gratuitous plug, but I'm going to go ahead and run this. So if the people will just bear with me. Currently unrepresented and would like to know how to compare up to 3 properties side by side, room by room, then go over to my new YouTube channel, subscribe while you're there, watch the demo. Afterwards, get with me and we'll set up your exclusive account today. You need to fire the producer on this show, I'll tell you that right off the bat.
We're working the bugs out, Dale. That's no problem.
Well, we can run through this dry all we can, but like I say, you're in Brentwood, I'm here in the Holla. We're running back and forth. We at least have a good stream. Well, it's going to lie to me, not just tell me to drop it back down. But we'll just have to see how it all runs. We're back up to green light here. We set this up earlier, practiced quite a bit of it, and YouTube told us it wanted an even faster stream, and I'm like, I'm not really, you're always dependent on the technology. And in this day and time of the coronavirus going around and everybody having a little bit of a anxiety attack, and I think it's very valid. I see people that are kind of holding off on listing. And to me, it's a great time to sell a house because we have extremely low inventories. It's a little more challenging for the buyer because there's a lot less going on. I had a customer call in, and we pulled some information for her and looked in the area that she was looking at. And it's a smaller, more rural county as opposed to the Murfreesboro area. We found that there were, I think, 19 properties available, and 16 of those 19 were under contract. Mm-hmm. So it's tough. So it is a good time if you have a property you want to sell. If there's something that is not going well for you, it is important to understand how the mortgage modification and those type of processes will affect your credit. Because again, I've heard horror stories of people who will say, well, we're not really sure. We're a little income insecure at this point in time. So we wanted to go and do that, a little bit of a delay on there as we were being offered that we could do. And my point was there's a cost to everything, more so than just rolling that interest to the tail end of the mortgage or however it's done. There's paperwork involved. The people have to do this. I think it would be naive to suggest that it wasn't going to show up in your history that this took place. And if they need it, they need to take it. And they certainly don't need to default if they can avoid it. So it's every person's situation is unique and different. But a lack of action to me is the worst thing, just being afraid to deal with something. And I would assume that, if someone felt like they need to talk to their mortgager, they would talk to their mortgage servicer and see what they had to say about it. Also, if someone is in the market, maybe they reach out and find you, talk to you, speak on their particular case without necessarily going full bore into an application. Is that something you might be able to just help someone, just kind of give them that health checkup?
I'm with you, Del, in that I think that, goes back to knowledge is power. If you're avoiding knowing something or avoiding the pain of discovery, then you really can't do anything about it. And there's a philosophy out there. I think somebody wrote a book called Eat the Frog or something. And it's the idea that you do the hard stuff the first part of the day. You wake up and eat the frog, and then the rest of the day is great because you got the worst part of your day out in the beginning. And so I'm kind of a guy that really works any bad news or unpleasantries in my life that way. And the truth of the matter is, for a lot of people, that reality is not nearly as bad as we make it out to be, because we do put this fear and this anxiety around what we think to be true. But if we're not an expert playing in it every day, then we may be making things up. I always use my investment guy as an example of that to illustrate that I really don't know much about investing. And I don't know, I certainly can't spend 10 hours of my working day watching investments and becoming an investment expert. So I hire a guy to do that. And my investment guy texted me yesterday with a number about how much my investments had gone up since March. I was like, that's what I pay you for, man. That's awesome.
Well, I tell you what, the expertise of the people that we work with has a lot to do with it. Now, in real estate, we're always deferring, and sometimes I've had people say, well, it feels like you're always putting us off on someone else. And it's, well, the reality is we have a legal obligation to our people that we have agreements with to represent them, and we have a fiduciary responsibility. So we have to do what we do. And we just need to be smart enough to know when it's not our lane and we shouldn't be in there driving. So we drive people to those who need a little help. And we can get them the help with people who are more efficient at doing it, for one thing, more accurate doing it at another. And that's why it's such a complicated process, because we have the inspections that we go through. We have so much that we do. From the insurers, we want to make sure, I tell people, get a base idea, add into it, because we have what we call the PITI, which is the kind of represent the total price. Now, sometimes when people go online just to these little mortgage estimators, they don't always include that in, and a lot of banks will let you borrow more than me personally in my old conservative ways I'd feel comfortable doing, because I know I may get a fixed rate loan, but I know that my insurance is going to probably increase over time, and I'm pretty sure that my taxes are going to go up over time. I'm watching Nashville, and they're getting a nice 34% tax increase. Well, Rutherford County, Murfreesboro specifically, I think it was, got a sizable tax increase this last go around. So I think it's important to be smart about how you borrow money, because Dad always told me, give yourself a little bit of a cushion, because you don't always know. I've had people tell me that they were in such a position trying to get together their down payment and all of their initial cost and things such as the appraisal paid for, that if the house didn't come with the refrigerator, they were going to be using an ice box for a while, and that can be tough on people. So are there different ways? I mean, it's pretty common, I think, for people to be able to roll a certain amount of fees in, like the appraisal, in if you get the loan. And I've had people tell me, said, well, if you close the loan, we'll roll the appraisal in the process. And if you don't, you may have to come up with that in the event that, we don't get you. Something doesn't come up. Maybe the house doesn't appraise. It doesn't have enough value to be loaned against because of the amount of down payment that's available, that kind of thing. So if that's the case and they don't close, the prospective borrower might have to pay up. But that's something that I instantly say, this may be some of it, but you better confer with your expert, such as Zack Jones, to find out how their particular mortgage product will work, because there's a lot of kind of trickiness that goes on, seem to be, based upon, as you said, knowledge is power. Well, I can think of the days when buying some points over the life of a loan may make sense, but we have some fairly historically low rates now, and if you're, there's some math to do in that, and that's not really my forte. So again, that's one of those, you need to see your expert and be very comfortable with your expert. I mean, I think, to me, I see a lot of apps, type your information in and we'll give you a quick number. And I don't think that they do as good a job as like you and I may do for someone, because we're real. We have heartbeats. We work, and you can ask us questions where that form, the internet form, may be a little harder. Maybe you put something in there that didn't really apply, but you thought it did when you did. So it can cause trouble. And I think there's no substitute for good old-fashioned service.
Well, I agree. And there's so many things, and I think that we're all kind of discovering what our vulnerabilities are when we submit our information online. The big brands, there's a lending tree out there that is really just a lead generation service. And so you put your information in there, they're not going to give you a mortgage quote. They're going to sell your information to 17 lenders who all pull your credit in the next 15 minutes. And then they're going to either ignore you based on what they believe your value to them is, or they're going to come after you pretty relentlessly for the next 45 or 60 days, whether or not you tell them that you're interested. So you got to kind of understand what you're doing and what you're dealing with. And there are a lot of online only lenders. Some of the biggest names in the business are those online only lenders. And that loan officer that calls you back may have been a bartender last week and got laid off due to coronavirus and is now sitting in a cubicle in Phoenix or Dallas and or Detroit, more likely Detroit, because that's where the big ones are, and giving you mortgage advice. And mortgage is pretty high science. It's not unlike real estate, and getting a seasoned expert to help you navigate all of the nuances of a multi-$100,000 transaction. it's well worth everything that you invest in that relationship to get that expert advice, because your cousin who just got their real estate license to supplement their income from the quickie cash down the street that they work in their 9-to-5 job, they don't have the expert relationships and the expert resources that a true professional real estate agent has. And so,
well, I gotta cut in here just to be on the safe side. I would like to believe that all real estate professionals are good, but I'm gonna pull a little Animal Farm and say I would like to believe that some are a little better than others, but we're all good. And I take your point, and it was what I was making, and not for myself, but for the mortgage industry, because when you go online, you have to worry about whether or not you're going to have wire fraud is a big thing right now. I have a separate email that is not one of the more public ones. I have a Gmail account I use for a lot of the advertising and things like that. It's portable. It's there. It's available. It gets spammed constantly. And so I have a separate email that's off of a different service to make sure that I have one that is less likely to be tampered with. And of course, the closing that's done by the attorneys. But even then, we stand on edge all the time, worried about someone going to get in there and say, "Oh, there's been some last minute changes. Don't wire it to that account. Wire it to this one over there." And next thing you know, the deal is blown. Everyone is upset, and somebody's looking for where their money went. So I prefer. It's just me. In all of my own personal houses, I've always had a real person that I could pick that phone up and call and ask them and say, "Look, well, I just had some tires blow out. I'm nervous. I'm saving money. I've got this down payment ready to go. I don't want to take anything out, but I'm a little. Can you give me that feel good feeling that this is not going to blow up in my face because I've got to get some tires and I've got to do this. This is not like I just want to go out and buy some new furniture." But some people really struggle with that closing cost of the loan and the attorneys, and it's confusing. And that's why I think it's important to have someone that can kind of help you go through that. And I tell people, if you're thinking about buying a home, treat it as if you're getting ready to lose your job, that you're afraid you're going to get fired, and your mental mindset as far as maybe we can go a little bit longer before we buy some new high price shoes for the children or whatever. Because everything can be an emergency given its own perspective. But when you're trying to buy a house, you really don't want ripples in the waters and accumulation. You mentioned one of the C's. The accumulation of your ability to have a little bit of reserve has a lot to do with things, I think. I think a lot of times in the credit scoring, I'm not an expert. I do know some credit experts like you, but the capacity, like if you have credit cards, even if you have, they say, well, I don't have a lot of credit cards, but the ones you have may be getting close to being maxed out. So there's no emergency reserve. No one wants to see you use that emergency reserve, but they want to see that you have a little bit of savings, a little bit of something to help flow you over. And I think that's where you guys come in. You help them see their way through that. And from my standpoint, if they're not ready to go right now because they found that they had something reported on their credit report that they've got to get that correct and get that out of it, I don't necessarily run away from them. I'm there. I'm available. We'll work on it. If not today, we'll get her done. So credit repair is a part of it, getting better. Maybe something changes or someone has an illness and your situation changes. We're in this for the long haul. We're professionals. It shouldn't be thought of as, well, what stage in my life am I right now? I think I want to go try something else. So I'm looking at the clock. I gave a little longer than I intended to because we had the little bit of a late start due to the technology wanting to fight with us a little bit. But I think we've got this one kind of wrapped up. I don't want to take away your entire day. I do know you have some work to do, and I want to personally thank you for being willing to sit in on this, and we'll do some more. And hopefully, as we get better at the production, see, we got to fire the producer. That's me. We got to work on that producer. All the prep in the world's not quite like when you go game day live. So maybe we'll get some more interaction going in. We can get some questions. If people know that we're available and we're here, they can ask you specifically. Now, in this case, never give out any personal information, such as your address and your account numbers, anything like that. I want to take one last trip around the YouTube just to see. Yep, see that we have it. We've not ignored a single soul with this, so we're in good shape. And like I say, Rona's got a lot of people's lives turned upside down, but like you say, if you're going to do it, eat that frog first. So
very good, Dave. Well, thank you for having me, Dale. I'd be happy to come back and join you anytime for good discussion, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Well, thank you very much. And I guess with that, if I can find the right scene as the producer of this thing, where are we at? Here we are. I thank you. I appreciate it. And I think we're going to wrap this up. I want to appreciate anyone who looks at this. I'm going to store this online. There's some media experts that say don't leave stuff online, but if we got good value and we have good information out there and a guest comes in and they help us with this, I think it's owing to them that we leave that information around. It will be dated material as time goes on. There's always something that changes, but it will give them some information. And I have within the stream should be the contact information for anyone who chooses to cooperate with me and try to go through some of this. So I want to thank you all for coming, and very much. I will see you on the next episode of Delbridge with his guest, or whatever I name this thing. So thank you, folks. We appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.